Hey guys, we're in Simi Valley, California. This is Excel Group North America headquarters, and we're checking out a really unique electric bike from Haibike today. It's one of their brands. It's the Radius Tour, and they call this thing a folding bike, but the frame doesn't really fold, so to me it's more of a compact bike, okay? The pedals have this really unique sort of spreading characteristic, flip pedals. They're from VP, and then this is the, I think it's Speedlifter Twist Pro, and it actually telescopes 150 millimeters up like this, and then there's an adjustable angle, -10 to 50 degrees right there, so you can bring it up a little bit higher even, or kind of down and aggressive like it's set up right now. So you can imagine, you know, dropping this thing a little bit. You actually have to do that, like quick release open, and then see how there's this silver lever? If you push that up, you can actually twist the handlebars. It's a little bit tricky to do with one hand. There we go, I'm getting it. See, just like that, and it clicks into place. You could spread those pedals like we did before, and then the bike actually gets pretty flat. So if you had an RV or something, you could slide this underneath, or maybe you could slip it into a closet a little bit easier and tip it up if you're someone who lives in an urban environment. Beautiful matte black color. It only comes in one frame size, about 14 inches on that seat tube right there. And you'll notice there's some scratching on the seat post, 31.6 millimeters, 450 millimeter length. So it's extra tall so that it can accommodate larger riders. I just found that it fits really tight. This is not a quick release right here. This is just a standard hex wrench. And I loosened it like all the way. Just the tubing is really tight. And this might be one of their first sample models or something like that. But, you know, if Haibike's listening, I would say loosen that up a little bit, because if this is designed to be sort of stowed regularly, man, I was like pulling on the frame, really kind of working hard, and I was worried that I was going to bend the saddle rails here. Really nice saddle, Haibike branded crank arms right here, 170 millimeters. So that's a standard length on those crank arms. You're getting really sort of a normal cadence happening, like a longer cadence. It's not like they're 165 millimeters. And then we've got a really big 52 tooth aluminum alloy Miranda chainring, and then this really cool plastic tubing, almost like a chain cover, so it would keep your skirt or your pants from getting greasy on the chain. There's only one sprocket in the rear. I believe that's 18 tooth, and it connects up to this Shimano Nexus Inter 8 internally geared hub. I really like that hub. It shifts really crisply. You can shift at standstill, so it's not going to hurt anything right now when I'm just changing gears. And you can imagine being in an environment where there's a hill, or maybe you're on vacation and you don't know the terrain very well, and you're in a higher gear enjoying that pedal assist, the motor support, and then you have to stop abruptly, and now you're faced with this dilemma like, oh, okay, I need to shift gears. That's where an internally geared hub is really nice. And by only having one sprocket and a single chain ring up here, that chain is really tight. It's not going to bounce all over the place. It's probably not going to fall off. They don't need a guide or a full chain cover. They're able to keep it relatively lightweight and clean and minimalist with this cool plastic tubing. I have the name of that back in the full written review, all the specs and stuff. The bike itself weighs about 49.2 pounds, so about 50 pounds. That is not super light for a compact bike, but you have a 500 watt-hour battery, 36 volts, it's 13.6 amp hours. It's got the little LED readout here, 4 little dots that you can see, so whether it's on or off the bike, you get some idea of how full it is. This is the Yamaha PWseries motor. It only gives you cadence support up to 100 RPM, so it's a little bit slower, not quite as sporty as like the PWX. Now they have like a PWseries SE, which has Bluetooth integration and 110 RPM support. So it's like 100, 110, 120 at the PWX. This is great for like around town. It definitely gets the job done. And you can see on this side of the battery, there's a little charging port. It is sort of in the way of the crank arm and the pedals, so be careful if you're charging this thing on the bike. You don't want to bump those cranks and then shear it off or bend it or something like that. Also, the kickstand down here, pretty nice. You know, it's not adjustable length, but it doesn't really need to be. This is decent, but it is in the way of that crank arm, so you get pedal lock like that if you're backing the bike out from your garage or something. It'd be nice if the kickstand was positioned a little bit further back, but for a compact bike like this, I understand. Haibike always has these really beautiful internally routed cables and the nice channels that actually have a little bolt there, so you can get more access to it. If you're a shop, it's a little bit easier to work on. All the wires are wrapped. Really nice. This is a rigid aluminum alloy fork. Pretty much everything on this bike is aluminum alloy, so you're not going to get rust, and I mentioned that up there with the chain ring. plastic fenders, 60mm, nice, like definitely getting the job done. They haven't been too loud, and they are adjustable. Before I get too far off of this battery area, I'm just gonna seat that rubber cover again and unlock it here. So you turn the key. It is not spring loaded, so I have to like physically lock it before I can pull the keys out. AXA locking core. The battery tips out to the side. See how nice that is? Compared to something like Bosch where you have to lift it up, they can't, you know, the tubing can't be as tight as it is here. That top tube is gonna be a little bit higher. This weighs about 6.6 pounds. There you go, it's 36 volt, 13.6 amp hours. It's got that nice loop at the top, easy to carry around. And then my least favorite part of the Yamaha electric bike systems, their charger. The good part about it is it gives you 4 amps, which is faster. It's gonna fill the battery quickly. But some of the negatives, it's like it's got this tiny circular plastic plug. I mean, if that gets stepped on or bent because the crank arms pass by, that's gonna get broken, and it's not disconnectable. A lot of times these chargers have like a plug, like a removable wall side, so if you go to different countries, they can easily like customize it for that country, different plug. This one doesn't have that, and look how big it is. This thing's like 2.1 pounds compared to the Bosch 4-amp charger. It's 1.7 pounds, and it's just big. It's just really big. It's like, it almost takes up as much room as like the battery in terms of length, with those, even with the wires like really tucked in. I gotta complain about something here, right? Like this is an expensive bike. It's $3,000. You know, in a way that's super expensive, but in another way it's like, well, you get a really reliable drive system, high capacity battery, fast charger, you know, fenders that I talked about. We've got a rack here, 25 kilogram max weight carry more with a spring latch right there. So that's about 55 pounds max weight if you're in the US. We've got a, let's see, Bush & Mueller LED light built right into the rear fender. And we've got Kendo by Spaninga headlight. I think it's like 15 lux. It's really nice to have both of those running off that battery, and you can actually tap into it with the little button pad up here. There's a micro USB port in that. So, you know, before I get too far, it's like, on the one hand, it seems kind of expensive, 3,000 bucks. On the other hand, there's some premium components. You get the 2-year plus warranty, comprehensive. You got dealer support, really nice looking bike, and it's custom. To get a bike that's got this funky frame and all the fancy parts like the swiveling headset and everything, that's a little bit more expensive, and they've done a great job selecting tires as well. So this is the Schwalbe Balloon, big bend balloon, meaning a little bit fatter. These are 20 by 2.15, 2.15 being like that width there, and that gives you a little bit more stability, especially on a smaller 20-inch wheel like this. The 20-inch wheels, they kind of, you know, they have a higher attack angle, so when you hit bumps or curbs or anything, they just boom, you know, they hit it and they fall into bumps easier versus spanning them with like a larger wheel diameter. However, the larger wheels, they raise the bike up, so your standover height's gonna be higher, maybe difficult to mount. The whole bike's gonna be longer. This isn't very long. Like, again, I've got all those specs, the measurements, the height, the width, even the folded width, folded back at the website, like I do. And the goal is just to try to help you if you're someone with that limited space and you're trying to figure out if this is gonna work for you. But these tires have 2 really cool characteristics. One is that reflective sidewall stripe, and then they also have Performance Line Race Guard. Race Guard, it's like not necessarily the toughest puncture protection, but it is gonna be a little bit lighter and it's gonna roll really efficiently. So they're trying to give you a lot of efficiency here. So again, you know, they've got the rating here, 30 to 55 PSI. I would probably be at the lower pressure myself because I'm a lighter weight rider, and there's no suspension on this bike. That's a rigid aluminum alloy fork. The saddle is a little bit more active. You know, Haibike it's a sportier brand, but this type of bike, I mean, it's not a mountain bike. It's kind of a get around town bike is how I see it. And you can't really very easily replace this seat post with a seat post suspension because it's so long if you're a tall rider. I mean, maybe. I think Connect Body Float has some longer options, or maybe Thudbuster or something. You can experiment with that yourself. I just like to get the full, you know, maximize my pedal strokes. I don't want to be like squatting and doing that. So that's something I would think about. The comfort options that they have done really well are these ergonomic locking grips and just the tires. So that PSI range, lowering the PSI. But if you lower it too much and you hit a curb or something, you might get a pinch flat where, you know, the tire kind of pushes in and it presses against these rims. These are very nice rims though. Aluminum alloy, they're black. They've got this nice reinforcement eyelet pattern going on. 32 hole black spokes as well, black hub in the middle, black, 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 like just all the way around. And then even the Inter 8 internally geared hub in the back is black as well, and the chain thing, and it's really good. So again, with a motor that's measuring really dynamically how you're riding, that rear wheel speed with the magnet there and the sensor on that side, pedal cadence and pedal torque, it's dynamic. It feels really good. And Yamaha has this whole like zero cadence start thing that they like to advertise. The idea is that like as soon as you start to press, you have power right away. So it feels kind of like as responsive as a throttle or something. You get the support of that motor up to 70 Newton meters of torque. You know, not bad at all, especially considering something like the Bosch motors. Some of the lower end ones, the active line, give you like 40 or 50 Newton meters, and then up to their performance line 63, and up to the performance line CX 75. So for this one to be 70 right out of the gates is pretty good. And again, it's nice to have that higher torque when you have such a large chainring, 52 teeth. This is really big. In part, they want it to be big to sort of slow your cadence because you have such small wheels. If you had bigger wheels, then they might make that chainring smaller. So it's all about balancing and giving you a comfortable cadence, and that's something the display actually shows you is your pedal RPM if you want to. So I think I'm gonna jump into that. I'm gonna straighten those handlebars out. Before I do though, I've got a nice floating dropout here. So you got those bolts and you can slide it to tighten that chain. 135 millimeter hub spacing in the rear, 100 millimeter up front, quick release on that front wheel if you really wanted to take it out. But if you do, be careful because these plastic fenders are still on and they could kind of get bumped. And then the brakes. So these are 2-finger Shimano hydraulic disc brakes, 160 millimeter rotors front and rear. That's plenty for a 20-inch wheel. The wheel's smaller. You're getting pretty good mechanical advantage over it already. So 160 millimeter front and rear. And then these brake levers are adjustable, so you can set them out like they are right now, or you can have them pull in a little bit closer, and that's gonna be easier if you have smaller hands or gloved hands. And they're not gonna have, cable stretch and stuff the way that mechanical brakes would. Okay guys, we're in the shade now, so you can see the display a little bit easier. This does have a faint blue backlight glow to it, which is really nice. Before I get into the actual controls, I want to mention that if you hold the power button and the S, which might stand for select or switch or something, if you hold those, it'll let you adjust the clock and also change from miles per hour to kilometers per hour. So that's a nice little tip. For now, I'm just going to tap the power button. It boots up very quickly. We've got a power meter on the left. You're going to see that surging when we ride later. Clock, speed, it's in miles per hour right now. And then down here, some trip stats and a 10-bar battery infographic. That's great. 10% increments. Really nice to have those compared to like 20% increments. Right now we're in RPM. That's where I left it last time. I was testing my own RPM and getting a feel for what the motor's like when you're exceeding the supported cadence. Again, this is a single chain ring here. It's not like a reduction gear, but Yamaha also supports up to 2 chain rings. So it's just kind of an interesting system, really dynamic. It does not have shift detection the way that Bosch does, but when you have an internally geared hub, not such a big deal. This hub kind of protects itself. If you switch gears under load, it doesn't actually change until you ease off a little bit, and then it shifts. So that's really nice. Want to mention the bell. I always appreciate that. Just like a nice clean cockpit. The removability of this display is just so great for protection. And then this is little micro USB port I was talking about before. So that puts out 5 volts, 500 milliamps. It's enough to maintain your smartphone or maybe the GPS or whatever that you've got going on. Here's the light button. When I press that, we've got a little, headlights are working. I love that the headlight's up a little bit higher considering this is a compact bike. It keeps you more visible. And then there's that rear light. It's small, but it gets the job done. And if you had a trunk bag or maybe a seat post light or maybe a backpack light, there's always room for safety in my opinion. And then you got those reflective sidewalls, so you get a nice, just a good visual footprint. If I press that S button, we're gonna cycle from RPM to average speed, about 9.4 miles per hour, max speed 16.3, trip distance, odometer. It says distance again, but this is actually range, and it's really cool. So if I arrow up to plus eco, it says 126 miles. That's phenomenal. You're not getting a ton of support at this level. Yamaha says plus eco is about 50% power. If we go up to eco, that's 100% power, and then up to standard, it's 190, and up again to, I think it's high, that's 280. Yeah, so 280% of like the work you're doing is given back to you by the motor, up to 70 Newton meters of torque, 52 miles. That's still really good for, you know, for the highest level of assistance. Not bad. Again, this motor is rated at 250 watts. Most of the mid-drives European e-bikes are, because that's the European regulation, but it's still very powerful, and I like that it's got this kind of skid plate built in, and it's just tough and it's kind of slim. Really nice setup here. Okay, so coming back to just the display, and maybe it's a good time to hop on this thing and give it a ride. I do like that it's adjustable. It kind of swivels a little bit if you've got some glare. And then for those people who are parking outside, just being able to, I can do it right now. There's like a little lever on the back right there, and you just press it down and slide that off. It's got a little battery built in, CR2032 coin battery, and then a little hole for maybe adding a leash. You could put it on a keychain. Kind of keeps its settings maybe with that little battery. So now it's back on the bike, power up again, super fast. One thing that's interesting about Yamaha in the US is that they've disabled walk mode. You know, I think they're just being extra careful, like, oh, we don't want to have people think it has a throttle, which I think is a little bit ridiculous. Yamaha, come on, like other companies have walk mode, they've enabled it. If you get a flat tire, or maybe you're walking with a friend through the grass, up a hill, walk mode makes a lot of sense, and just having a few mile per hour support. Also, I just want to, again, compliment these pedals. They're metal, they're a little bit bigger. They don't have like big nubs on them, so you might not scratch your shins. Like both of my shins have cuts on them because I'm riding bikes all the time. They're not going to cut you up, but they're just a little bit bigger for people with bigger feet, and they're not going to flex. Again, those full-length crank arms, it's a nice setup. Okay, so I'm going to do this in the highest level of assist, try to give you some idea of how that motor sounds. Starts pretty quickly, but sometimes there's a little bit of delay when it stops, and it's got that full-size chainring. It just seems like it takes a second for it to wind down. I'm gonna press that select button here again and go back to RPM. So this is, I'm pedaling at 76, 88, 95. This is what about 100 RPM looks like. It's not super fast. If I really start to pedal, now I'm above 100 and the motor isn't actually assisting me. This is all me working, but at least there's no reduction gear like dragging me down built into that. So I feel like it's a good compromise, sort of a middle ground here. The Yamaha mid-motor, it is very quiet, especially the PW. That's sort of their entry point, and I'm gonna ride around in high. Keep an eye on the chain. It's not like this plastic thing creates any drag because it just follows the chain, but I did hear some, maybe it's scraping, like there's the hub freewheeling in the back. Like, let's just try that. If I spin this, yeah, there's like a little bit of, yeah, I can hear it kind of going on, and I was trying to figure out what that was. That is a brand new bike, so that might go away over time. Again, this freewheels. It doesn't drag you down when you're pedaling or anything like that. The higher you go with the RPM, the pedaling, the louder it's going to be. And of course, in the higher levels of assist, I'm going to pedal, I'm going to shift some gears, start and stop, just get an idea of how quickly it responds. Go. We were able to reach our top assisted speed of 20 miles per hour, 32 kilometers per hour in the US, but I did have to shift gears. I noticed that I was hitting that RPM limit when I was in the lowest gears, and the bike just wasn't going faster. So I feel like there's a lot of power here, but it's kind of a limited power band. Like you have to be pedaling and have to be shifting in order to empower the motor. That makes sense. That's kind of the way it goes with mid drives. And again, it definitely puts some extra strain on the drivetrain itself, so the chain and the rear sprocket and even the internals. But I feel like this is a pretty tough setup. It's clean, it's not bouncing around, it's not chipping up the chain stays or anything. I definitely like it. It feels fairly comfortable, just given, I am going over some bumps and stuff, but I think those tires make a big difference, and they do feel relatively stable. Just kind of no hands. Especially for like a 20-inch wheel diameter. A lot of times that's a little bit squirrely. And this is a stiff frame. I do not know the maximum weight rating, and maybe Haibike doesn't advertise one, but it feels like this is going to be sturdier than some of the cheaper, you know, folding bikes. Yeah, technically this doesn't fold, but if you're able to get by with this and still fit it into your truck or your RV or boat or plane or whatever, it's going to be a higher quality ride experience. And I think that's part of what you're paying for, that and the dealer support and everything. Hey guys, I know it's fun to see these bikes in action, so I'm here with my friend Jim Marr. He's a marketing manager with Haibike, and you know, he's on the compact. So we're gonna cruise around on this thing and just give you a third-person perspective. Sound all right, Jim?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, here we go.
Ready?
Go for it. How tall are you?
I am about 6'2".
He's 6'2", okay, you know, and he's getting decent leg extension. That seat post is not all the way up right now either. So I'm gonna go in front. Not bad. We got the lights on right now, but it's a little bit bright out. Looking good. The taillight really stands out. Wanna race me?
Are you sure?
Yeah. There he goes. Looking good. Thanks, Jim. So I think that's about it, guys. That's the Radius Tour from Haibike. 3,000 bucks. For the full written review on this, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Again, I just measured everything I could. I've got comments and stuff. I'll try to chime in and help you, and I'll be reviewing some other Haibikes. Have fun out there. Ride safe.